Where things start to get strange. Let's talk about the appearance of this so-called mountain. Judging by looks alone, Mount Kailash hardly looks like a mountain. Now, to be clear, Mount Kailash isn't the only mountain that takes the shape of a pyramid. There are many other pyramidal peaks in the world, like Pyramid Mountain in Alberta, Alpamayo in Peru, Muratov Peak in Bulgaria, and several others. However, as you can see, all of these other mountains have the imperfections you'd expect from a naturally occurring landform. Mount Kailash, on the other hand, does not. Its sides are almost perfectly perpendicular, almost like someone intentionally designed and constructed the mountain that way. This gives Kailash a highly symmetrical look, with each slope aligning to each of the 4 cardinal points. And this brings me to my next point. Each of the 4 faces of Mount Kailash is reported to have different colors. The north face is said to be the color of gold. The south face is lapis lazuli. The east face is the color of crystal. And the west face is the color of ruby. Speaking of faces, the northern slopes of Mount Kailash always have far less snow than its southern slopes. Now, that doesn't immediately strike you as odd until you realize that in the northern hemisphere of the Earth, the south side typically gets more sunlight than the north side. This means that, naturally speaking, the north face of Mount Kailash should have far more snow than the south side, since it receives less sunlight. But once again, Mount Kailash bends the law of nature, and its northern slope experiences relatively little snow in comparison to the south face that gets more sunlight, and still manages to welcome glaciers and snowfall all year round. As if this isn't weird enough, there's also the very strange magnetic force field on Mount Kailash. On a good day, finding your bearing with a compass is a pretty simple task, since the Earth's magnetic field is as straightforward as a bar magnet with a North Pole and a South Pole. On Mount Kailash, however, that law seems to break entirely. People who have tried using a compass at Mount Kailash have found that it never works. The needles just keep spinning and never end up pointing north. Mount Kailash also has 0 plant life, which is highly unusual. Mountains always have trees and plants growing out from their fissures. But strangely, on Mount Kailash, not even one plant can be found. It's completely barren. Now, here's where things go from weird to, quote, too coincidental to be random, unquote. The south face of Mount Kailash seems to come with a swastika inscribed on it. No one knows if this was inscribed by someone or if it was the result of natural activity. All we know for sure is that when the sun sets on the south side of Mount Kailash, the massive vertical ice cracks and horizontal strata of the rock form a shadow of a left-facing swastika, which, interestingly, is considered an auspicious sign for all four religions that consider Mount Kailash sacred. Amazed? Well, things get even weirder, because the swastika isn't the only ancient religious symbol inscribed on Mount Kailash. According to satellite views of the mountain, the face of Hindu deity, Lord Shiva, appears on Mount Kailash. Also, the snow on the peak of this mountain takes the shape of Om, which is considered the greatest and most sacred syllable of all the mantras in Hinduism. Things are definitely no less mysterious on the geographical side of things. Mount Kailash is popularly known within geographical circles as the navel of the earth. This is because the mountain sits exactly at the very center of the planet, or the axis mundi, as some religions call it. From this position, Mount Kailash maintains an eerily consistent distance from major structures around the world. For instance, Kailash is 6,666 kilometers away from Stonehenge, as well as the North Pole and the South Pole. Not weird enough for you? Well, Mount Kailash is also 13,332 kilometers from base to peak. That's 6,666 kilometers times 2. On top of that, Mount Kailash has these two lakes which bend the laws of science just as well as Kailash itself does. The two lakes are known as Mansarvor and Rakshastal, and from their characteristics today, you'd hardly believe that these two used to be the same body of water before they became separated due to tectonic activity. On the one hand is Mansarovar. It's a freshwater lake, round like the sun and boasting aquatic life. But here's where things get interesting. Mansarovar is the highest freshwater lake in the world. However, even at its altitude, the lake never freezes over, no matter the time of the year. The lake also never moves, regardless of what extreme weather condition hits the area. Rakshastal, on the other hand, is completely different. Also called the Demon Lake, Rakshastal is shaped like the crescent moon, extremely salty, does not support life, and is quite turbulent compared to the Mansarovar. On top of that, locals claim that the Rakshastal periodically vanishes, leaving behind parched ground, only to mysteriously reappear at full volume later, like it never left in the first place. This is why some people refer to the lake as the Ghost Lake. However, none of these features of Mount Kailash are as bewildering or as terrifying as the experiences people have had trying to climb this mountain. Besides the horror story of the Siberian climbers, who died of old age after climbing Mount Kailash, there are other less terrifying but still unexplainable encounters that climbers have recorded on this mountain. In fact, except you're a hardened cynic, you'd probably be, at least, open to the idea that there's something or someone on this mountain who does not want anyone climbing it. Climbers have reported finding themselves suddenly going back the same way they came while trying to get to the peak of the mountain, almost like the mountain changed position as they climbed. Others were forced down by sudden, unexplained blizzards or rainstorms from nowhere, while some simply felt a mysterious wave of illness that made it impossible for them to continue. Colonel Wilson, one of the many mountaineers who tried to scale the summit of Mount Kailash, said, "Just when I discovered an easy walk to the summit of the mountain, heavy snow began to fall, making the ascent impossible." Sergei Chistyakov's experience was even far worse. In the words of the Russian climber, "When we approached the foot of the mountain, my heart was pounding. I was in front of the sacred mountain, which has never been beaten. I felt extremely emaciated, and suddenly I was captivated by the thought that I do not belong on this mountain, that I must necessarily come back. As soon as we started the descent, I felt liberated. But it's not just humans who have been unable to conquer Mount Kailash. Even our technological advancements in aeronautics have been beaten by this mountain. To date, even our most sophisticated planes still can't fly over Mount Kailash, as there seems to be some invisible force that keeps them from proceeding beyond a specific elevation at that height. What could possibly explain the multiple riddles thrown to us by Mount Kailash? Well, currently there are two theories, and though both of them provide thought-provoking and even plausible answers, neither offers a sufficient explanation to the many mysteries of Kailash on its own. Chapter 2. The Extraterrestrial Theory. The first theory we're going to examine is what I call the extraterrestrial theory, or the ET theory. In other words, there are those who believe that Mount Kailash was built by aliens, or probably even is an alien spacecraft. Here's why they believe that. To begin with, when compared to many Western religions, Hindu deities seem to have a much more tangible material presence on Earth. According to Hindu lore, the gods used to live on Earth thousands of years ago, before humans started to exist. But here's where things get interesting. Rather than make use of their divine powers, Hindu mythology suggests that these gods made use of highly advanced technologies. For instance, the Hindu epic text, Mahabharata, is loaded with examples of these advanced technologies, from flying vehicles to voice-activated weapons, and even events that sound a lot like nuclear detonations. And that's not even all. The Mahabharata also talks about a day in our planet's history when the Earth was surrounded by gigantic cities, and then small vehicles came down from these cities, which apparently had teachers in them. Could these events that the Mahabharata records be talking about encounters, not with the divine, but with aliens? And just in case you're having some doubts, perhaps this might convince you a bit. Hinduism isn't the only religion with such ET-like encounters in their mythology. The Pyautes also speak of an advanced race of beings they call the Hav-Musuvs. These beings were beautiful with golden skin, long dark hair, white clothes, and white sandals. According to the Pyautes, the Hav-Musuvs also rode the wind with flying ships and possessed highly sophisticated weapons like a silver tube that could kill a man with one shot, or what we might call phasers. Altogether, these are three different mythologies from different parts of the world, all alluding to encounters that seem like they could have been with extraterrestrial beings. Even if you're a skeptic, you've got to admit that any other attempt to explain away these legends, other than to simply say that these people definitely experienced something otherworldly, would be a little far-fetched. Besides, we've got even more evidence to support the theory that Mount Kailash could have extraterrestrial origins. And to find this piece of evidence, we'll be taking a trip down to the Ellora Caves in India, where a 3-story temple to Shiva stands. This is the Kailasa Temple, the largest monolithic temple built to be a symbol of Mount Kailash, where Lord Shiva is said to live. According to archaeologists, this temple took 18 years to construct. But here's the twist. Altogether, the people who constructed this temple had to chisel away 400,000 tons of rock to carve out the temple. This means that they would have had to chisel away 60 tons of rock every single day for 18 years. Needless to say, that's an amazing feat of engineering that is impossible today, even with our super advanced technology. And we haven't even taken into account all the intricate embellishments on the walls of the temple. The mystery doesn't end there. Inside this temple is a network of caves and labyrinths, which allegedly lead to a super cave. According to reports, this super cave contains high-tech energy machines and other advanced technologies from an ancient civilization. Could this ancient civilization be referring to extraterrestrials? And is it too far-fetched to think that the same unknown beings who accomplished this feat of engineering in the Kailasa Temple could be the same beings who built Mount Kailash with its near-perfect symmetry? Besides, Ancient Sanskrit texts speak of power devices.
Основная часть ДНК, триплет ДНК пирамидален.
What Muldashev is referring to here is the Tibetan legend, which suggests that a city called Shambhala, or the City of Gods, exists underneath Kailash. According to legend, this city contains a sort of reservoir of the human gene pool that preserves the genes of people from ancient civilizations. Interestingly, one man believed that the origins of his race could be traced to this place. You might know him, Adolf Hitler. Verifiable reports show that in 1938, Hitler sent out a team of 5 Germans to explore Tibet for traces of the origin of the Aryan race, which he believed to be superior to all other races on Earth. But some other reports add that
Он хотел создать нового человека. Человека, который бы владел заклинаниями. Великими заклинаниями прошлого. Теми заклинаниями, когда, прошептав что-либо, можно было оторвать скалу и перенести ее взглядом куда-либо. Когда можно было бы строить такие дворцы, как Баальбек. невероятные дворцы, которые невозможно построить с помощью современной техники, чтобы можно было сделать такие мегалиты, как Бальбекские, например, или Асуанские в Египте, чтобы можно было строить пирамиды. То есть он хотел возвратиться к эре заклинаний, которая была значительно мощнее, чем нынешний мир.
Whatever the case, the point is that there are strong reasons to believe that Mount Kailash has a supernatural origin. Or how else do you explain the near-perfect appearance of the mountain, the tragic experience of the unfortunate Siberian climbers, the fact that even our most sophisticated planes can't fly above this mountain, or the weird time travel phenomenon that happens on Mount Kailash? The mythical legends just have to be true. Mount Kailash is a sacred mountain built and inhabited by divine beings, and only those without sin can successfully scale the mount. What other reasonable explanation could there be? Chapter 3. Critical responses to the theories. Well, as it turns out, there are pretty good explanations for some of the mysteries of Mount Kailash. Let's begin with the appearance of the mountain. Yes, Mount Kailash looks almost too perfect to be natural, but some scientists have said that the mountain's pyramidal shape very likely evolved during the ice ages of the Quaternary period about 2.6 million years ago. According to the theory, it was likely during this time that the glaciers dug out valleys and cut back slopes to form the smooth-sided and sharp-edged peak we now know as Mount Kailash. And since we're on the topic of snow and glaciers, one of the mysteries of Mount Kailash that we looked at today was how the mountain's north face has far less snow than the south face. Which is weird, because the south sees far more sunlight than the north and should be the one to have less snow. Well, turns out, there's one thing that's usually left out of the picture when this is brought up, and that is the fact that the southern slope of Mount Kailash faces the Indian Ocean. This means that it gets a lot more precipitation from the summer monsoon than the northern slope. With this moist air constantly rising above the southern slope, it shouldn't be surprising that it gets more snow than its northern sibling, where the air is relatively dry. As for planes not being able to fly over Kailash, this has less to do with supernatural forces keeping planes from flying, and more to do with the geographical terrain of Tibet. A popular nickname for the Tibetan region is the roof of the world, because it's over 4,000 meters above sea level and is dotted by the world's highest mountains. Now, technically, planes can fly over Tibet without accident. However, they avoid this because in the event of an emergency, Tibetan airspace is the worst place you want to be. First off, the cabins of airplanes are pressurized. So, if the plane develops a pressure problem mid-flight, oxygen masks have to be released to allow passengers to breathe. However, these masks typically only contain about 15-20 minutes of air. So, the pilot would have to lower the aircraft to an altitude of 3,000 meters or less, so that passengers don't die of suffocation. This is what makes flying over Tibet a nightmare. There's just no place to descend safely in case of an emergency and crash landing. The plane is an option that only works in movies. And even in movies, it doesn't always work. Unfortunately, these are the only puzzles of Mount Kailash that science can definitively explain. Chapter 4. More questions than answers. All other mysteries of this mountain have remained largely unsolved, including the one everyone is dying to understand, which is the mysterious aging phenomenon that happens on Kailash. One scientific formula came close to unraveling this mystery, as we will soon see. But ultimately, even that hit a dead end, just like the mystery of Om. Karag Singh Valdia, a highly respected geologist and former vice-chancellor of the Kumaon University, says that the depiction of OM on Mount Kailash could be rocks folded twice in a manner that the depressions within the arms of the overturned folds are filled round the year with ice and snow. But the impression of OM on Mount Kailash is too perfect to fit into this explanation. Even the dot is rightly placed. Science also fails to account for the unique geology of Mount Kailash. While surrounding peaks in Tibet are made of sedimentary rock, Kailash is the only mountain in the region to be made from black rock, a raw material that is quite rare. And that's not all. Climbers report finding themselves going the opposite way when trying to summit the mountain, like the mountain was changing its position. And while it's true that mountains are, in fact, always moving, once again, the case of Mount Kailash stands out sharply. For context,